you attract new cells to you that are able to live spiritual light. They have to move at a different frequency. They can't be so dense. It's why one of the reasons as you go on, you may find you become more sensitive. You can't eat the same amount of junk food you used to eat. You're actually changing. Your metabolism is changing. Your spiritual vibration is changing. You're actually, in spiritual terms, you're becoming quicker and quicker. You're speeding up. So this is the process that's happening within you. And on our particular path, 10, 20 years of this work. And then there is this union of light upon light, in which the two lights come together. And that is I suppose you would call it enlightenment. I'm not quite sure, I'm never quite sure what enlightenment is supposed to mean. But the Sufis call it unio mystica, union with God. When you realize your divine nature, when you become fully conscious of what you were before you were, of who you really are, not this illusory ego, not this complex, convoluted self, but this pure essence. And there is this, it can come in a moment of bliss, a moment of real awakening, and you are then yourself. And you are then yourself for the rest of that incarnation, of that life. Yes, there is a whole process of how do you live yourself. But there is this moment when the two lights come together. And it is inwardly it is like the birth of a star. It is a dramatic cosmic event, because we all have that potential within us. And the Sufis say all of creation rejoices, because it is really creation realizing its deepest potential, a human being waking up completely, being completely present, knowing who you are. It is, the Sufis call it coming home. You just come home. Of course, it's not the end of the journey, but you claim your light, your real light, and then you have to live that light. Now, traditionally, then, you either, in some traditions, in some, I think Buddhist traditions, I'm not quite sure, that's the time you are given a choice. You can go then if you want. You can just go. You're free. You are completely and totally free. You've realized your real nature. You can leave this world behind. And it's very, very easy to die then, because certain attachments that keep you on the physical plane have been burnt out. And so there are Buddhist trainings where you then do a certain meditation practice, and you go through all the levels of reality within yourself, and you get to a certain place, and once you go beyond that certain place, you don't come back. And the body of the monk is just sitting there in meditation, and there's nobody there anymore. Or you can choose to come back. The old monk then returns to the marketplace in this beautiful Zen story of the different stages of the journey, the ox herding pictures. He comes back. Everything he looks upon is enlightened, because there is this pure presence, this pure light within him. It's just a completely natural way of being. That light within the human being touches everything it comes into contact with, and everything is awakened. It's a very natural, very beautiful process. And that's it. That is the classic journey. It's living the Bodhisattva motif, which is why in the Sufi tradition we say after the state of union with God becomes the station of servanthood. You go back into the world in service to the One, living the One, being the One. You have an outer appearance of an ordinary individual person, but within that there is this ever-expanding dimension of the One. You are the One. And you can read texts of people who have got to this stage and they have lost their individual self. There are many stories of that. And you live the one. But unfortunately, there aren't so many people that do this. It takes 20, 30 years unless you are, predestined to go through it earlier. It's a very, very labor-intensive process. It requires enormous physical, emotional, mental sacrifice on all levels. And but there is another tradition that is not so well known, which is there are moments in the destiny of the planet when the gates of grace open, and what used to be only available to the few is then given to many, or available to many. And there is, at this time, in cosmic time, if you like, in the planet, there is a need for anyone who has access to their light to live it in relationship to the whole. Say, traditionally, you only got to do that after you'd been through the journey. You sat in your cell or your ashram for 20 years. You go through all the stages of the path. Then you were allowed to teach. You weren't allowed to teach before then. Then you were allowed to go back into life. But, if you like, the rules have changed at this moment. If you like to look at it differently, the soul of the world is in need, is in dire need. And it has called out. It has called out to all those who have been awakened to their light. And it has said, there is a need for a certain light to be given to the world. And it is no longer enough just for the however many completely illumined beings there are on the planet. And there are only ever a few in number. There is a need for more people to be involved in this work, for more people to use their light in service to the whole. And this is for me where it gets very, very interesting. Because once you have been through all the stages of the path, you know your light is not your light. Traditionally, you know the individual Atma is the universal Atma. It's a very beautiful cosmic experience in which you realize yourself is not even yourself, it never was yourself. It is the universal self. It's a basic kind of experience on that. But you don't realize that after you've just been being a few years on the path. You don't know that. You still think it's your light. You've discovered it within yourself. It's changed your life. It's done extraordinary things to you. It's completely expanded your horizon. It's given you access to energies inside of yourself. You've met people you never would have met if you didn't have access to your light. It's one of the beautiful mysteries of spiritual friendship. I don't know if you're aware of it, but once you have access to your light, that light within you sees the people who have access to their light. It sees this resonance. This is when spiritual companionship starts to happen. There's one of my favorite Sufi poets, Abu Kahir, he says, what was more pleasing than when friend was with friend? The rest was only grief, while that was all joy. It is an extraordinary thing when your light wakes up and it starts to resonate. And you may find yourself with people who on a personality level, on a background level, you have nothing in common with. But suddenly there is something else. There is a resonance of light to light. You can actually see it on the inner planes because the light, your light, attracts itself to people whose light has a similar frequency. It's very, very simple. But what you then begin to see is that light is working in its own way. And I say it's not really your individual light. You think it is. It's changed your life. It's completely transformed you, and it's a transformation that goes on and on and on and on. You are always beginning. I've been in this business since I was 16, and it's still it still changes one, and there are still, you are always